Hello and welcome to the Charmed Life podcast. This podcast is all about magic, metaphysics, mysticism, and the unconditional love of the universe. And I am your host here. My name is Tricia Carr. I am really excited to invite you into this episode. This is a conversation with a really awesome, very, very cool and wise, divine, beautiful witch. I have been on her podcast called Witch Talks, and I'm really excited to share our conversation. This is Hana O'Neill. She is known as Hana the Suburban Witch. She is a professional tarot reader, natal astrologer, and eclectic witch. She's located in Australia. Hana's goal is to make witchcraft and alternative spirituality fun and accessible to all. As I mentioned, Hana hosts the podcast called Witch Talks, in which she interviews key witches in the community. And she also has a YouTube channel, and content on that YouTube channel is like spellcrafting, tarot tutorials, witchcraft basics. And she even details her own journey from Pentecostal Christian to proud witch. We have a lot in common. I want to also encourage you to follow her on Instagram because she posts some really fun and informative reels. So without further delay, I want to invite you to this conversation with Hana O'Neill, a.k.a. Hana the Suburban Witch, and I will chat with you on the other side. Well, Hana, it's so great to have you on, and I'm excited to welcome everyone into the beauty of your energy. You are so wise, you're so warm, and so very clever. I just love everything that you offer. And I found you on Instagram, I think, and I was like, oh my gosh, she's fantastic. Oh, wait, but maybe I found you on Instagram after you invited me on. It doesn't really matter, right? We're working on the quantum timeline, right?
I think so. I've been a long listener of your podcast, and so reached out to you thinking maybe if I invite the people that I admire onto my own podcast, this will be a great networking thing as well. And it has absolutely been.
Yes, that's exactly, that's how I started mine as well. It's also just it's so wonderful to meet different people, and for a while though, I actually wasn't having people on my podcast a lot because everybody that I had connected with on social media all turned to like conspiracy theory QAnon. So I was like, oh no.
It's pretty dicey. You never know at the moment, but it's good to chat with people who are on the more less conspirituality or more aware of how those can sort of bring you in and the dangers of QAnon as well.
We're moving out of that storm a little bit, or at least it's kind of sorting out. So it's, I think the storm is settling. But let's talk about you. You have so much to offer, and I love that we're going to talk about divination on this episode, but I want to let everyone just get into the energy in your work. So, we actually have a lot in common. As you say, you listen to my podcast. We both come from that evangelical Christian background, and now we are full-fledged witches in our practices. And so I would love for you to just let everyone know about your journey or the work that you're doing, and get everyone into the light that is you, Hana.
Thank you so much. It's a beautiful way to introduce me. I love that. So I'm obviously, if everyone listening, you can tell I'm from Australia. So I'm an Australian witch and tarot reader and astrologer. And I do a lot of education on witchcraft and tarot and astrology as well. So I'm a natural teacher. I love to help people learn and show them ways that make sense to other people, because one of my main frustrations is a lot of the information out there in the esoteric occult world. It's just so convoluted. It's a lot of people talk at this sort of high level expecting everyone to know, and it's like, no, let's just make this welcoming and open for everyone, which is almost the opposite of what the occult is supposed to be, but that's fine. We're in a different age these days.
We are, yes.
And as you said, I've come from this very strict evangelical Christian upbringing, which some people might term happy clappers. It was absolutely the church I was in, very charismatic.
Oh, I was in charismatic churches as well. I kind of did all of them, but except for Catholicism. But yes, the charismatic church was kind of where I gravitated to in my young adulthood. But it's the gifts of the Spirit. I think it makes sense why we, right? It's very
Yes. And
witchy, actually.
mine wasn't even a gravitation. Mine was, I was born in that.
Ah.
I was dedicated as a baby. I was
Mm.
baptized at the age of 5 and then again at the age of 8. So it
Okay.
was very much my entire life. We used to go to church sometimes 4 times a week.
Mm.
It was intense. And it's at Sunday mornings and Sunday evenings. I had Friday night youth group. I had Wednesday night prayer group. So it was very much all around me all the time. I went to a very private Christian school. So that was, a lot of people from my own church, but from other churches as well, or sister churches, as we
Mm.
would call them. So similar vein of that Pentecostal idea. And so we were taught creationism. We were taught evolution was evil. When we got kicked out of the church, it took me a few years to sort of come around to, I guess, mainstream thinking on a lot of things. And my husband, who's now my husband, when we met as boyfriend, girlfriend, it was a shock to him. He's like, "What do you mean you don't know about evolution? What are you talking about?" And I think I was embarrassed. I ended up doing a Khan Academy course on evolution to teach myself. It was these sorts of things that I'd just never been exposed to.
Mm.
And the witch community and the spiritual community as a whole, absolutely never. It was, to me, if I even looked at a pack of tarot cards, I would open up a portal to hell. That was my belief.
Yeah.
It was terrifying.
Yeah.
And thankfully, I'm a very curious person. And it did take quite a number of years to really deconstruct those fears. And I think I'm still deconstructing a lot of things I was brought up with as well now. But I've made a lot of progress, obviously, and I help a lot of people who have come from that same journey as well to show them that, no, using tarot is not going to open up a portal to hell. A demon is not going to jump out at you. That's not something that's going to happen. And just helping with that fear aspect as well. And when we bring fear aspect into things like divination and things like witchcraft or any of the spiritual realm, that can really block our energy. It can block our spiritual gifts and it can block the answers that we're looking for as well. So trying to bring that fear level down and the excitement and curiosity up is really going to benefit everyone, however their practice looks.
Yes. Yes, that is so true. What was the moment, or can you recall, is there a specific moment where you kind of shifted, like, and you said, I'm not going to be afraid anymore. And I'm going to look into whether it was tarot or astrology or which one of those was it that I think may have been your welcoming portal into your current craft, right? And do you remember? I remember a moment for me where I was like, oh, but I have a strong mind. So what? Who cares? Do you remember that threshold for you?
It was a lot of little moments that built up. I think my mum has even told me now that she remembers I was always drawn to dark things, which now that I see, they're not dark, they're just different. That was her mindset rubbing off on me. But as a young kid, it was always, I wanted to watch the horror movie or I wanted to, read about ghost stories. The school actually rang my parents one time because I was telling ghost stories at school and scaring everyone, and they wanted to tell me to stop that. And this was in primary school. I would have been 10 or 11. I just absolutely loved that idea of the paranormal, the supernatural, aliens, all of that was just so fascinating, but so not allowed in our household. It was forbidden, which probably made me want it more. And, as I grew up, I sort of would sneak a magazine we had these kids' teen magazines at Cosmopolitan. They might have a little sealed section. And one time there was, a little love spell in there. And I was like, oh, what have I stumbled across? I remember hiding in my bedroom and reading it under my bed. And so I'd had these little things where I was interested and curious, but then I'd also get that fear response as well. So it was this real juggling. And when we left the church, we didn't leave the church, we were kicked out of the church, which is always a bad sign of the church culture, I think.
Yeah.
We were kicked out when I was 15, 16, that sort of age. And then when I was 20 years old, I think I went for my first tarot reading. So it took a while, took quite a few years. And the only way I was able to do that was I was traveling by myself. I was in New Orleans, which is almost a mecca for magic and tarot, voodoo, all of those beautiful things. And I was there and I thought, it's now or never. Like, there's no one here to see that I'm doing it. I think that was a lot of the fear as well, that someone's going to judge me. It's not so much it was also about the demons popping out, but I think a lot of it was someone's going to see from the church, someone's going to know, and how is that going to look? Or my mum's going to find out. That was the fear.
Yeah.
And so I went for a tarot reading and it was really accurate. And I don't think I'd ever doubted the accuracy side of things because we'd been taught that witchcraft was absolutely real. Psychics were absolutely real. They were just doing devil's work. Anyway, I went for this tarot reading and it was fascinating. And I walked out of there and nothing bad immediately happened.
Shocking.
And that was the first like, okay, all right, cool. That was interesting. And being in Louisiana, I did have a few supernatural experiences around that time as well, which started to open me up to this world. And I think looking back, hindsight's 2020, I think this was a way my guides were like, she's ready.
Yep.
She's opening herself up and she's ready for this sort of information. So that was almost the beginning of my learning and awareness. I did have a few more supernatural experiences after that back home in Australia with seeing a ghost here, and then also using my clair aliens for the first time and having no idea what that was. And for anyone listening, that is your psychic sense of smell. So that experience, which was so visceral and just shocking to be like, why can't anyone else smell what I'm smelling? Just to put it in perspective, we were on a ghost tour at what's called the Arrowdale Asylum here in Victoria, Australia. Very old place, and it's on many, many acres. It's a very large property. The tour started at 8 p.m. and went until 2 a.m. and we were walking that whole time. And we walked into this house. It looks like this old Victorian house on the grounds. And as we stepped inside, I just said, oh my goodness, did they used to keep horses in here? It smells like a stable. It's like hay and straw. So overpowering. And everyone on this group just looked at me like, what are you talking about? It doesn't smell in here. I'm going, can't you smell that? It's like straw and hay. Seriously. And it was confusing. I thought, am I, what's happening to me? I haven't been drinking. Yeah. I think my husband said that because every time I used to smell burning toast, he'd say, are you having a stroke? It's a sign of a stroke. But we walked into this room and it almost bowled me over. That's how strong this smell was. And I'm looking at everyone going, can everyone really not smell this? And the guide walks up and he says, that's really fascinating that you say that. This was where they used to perform lobotomies. And what they would do is they didn't have running water back then. So they would fill the ground with straw and hay, which would soak up the blood. And then they'd sweep it out at the end of the day. And I'm getting my clairsentient shivers right now because that moment was just this absolute, like, I felt like I'd been smacked in the face. Like, what have I just tuned into? Is this like psychics on TV, on all those, supernatural, like ghost hunting shows that I watch? Have I picked up on something? And so that sort of made me open up that little more. And looking back again, my guides were like, we can give her this information in a way that's not scary, but will be validated.
Right.
So she knows that it's real.
And could see that guide was tuned in too well enough to be able to actually give you the validation. That's what's so cool too.
Exactly. So it was just all aligned perfectly. And after that, it sort of grew a little bit from there. And I started hearing a voice in my head, which is always concerning, but it wasn't like it was a voice, but not a voice. It's my clairaudience, but it was literally just saying, buy a deck of tarot cards. And I said to my husband, I'm like, I feel like I should buy a deck of tarot cards. I kind of whispered it like, can't even say the word. And he said, yeah, so go buy one. I was like, no, I can't do that. I can't do that. That's no. Demons will pop out. Can't do that. It's like, all right, so don't buy one. But I think I have to. I have this voice telling me I have to. And I think it did that for like a year of me back and forth. And I'd walked into stores and I'd had a little squiz and then I'd sort of run away or, those sorts of just toying with this idea. But it was really all this guidance to bring me to buying that first deck. And again, nothing bad happened. A hole didn't open up in the ground and swallow me up. Nothing bad happened. And I started using them and it just clicked. It was so easy for me to tune into these cards and read them. Yeah. And then more clairs started opening up and I could use them with more confidence. And when I was ready, a mentor appeared. It's like everything fell into place so beautifully. And now I've opened my own business that's been running for 3 years, and I provide tarot readings and how to learn tarot as well. Because going on that journey myself, the way it was presented was not a way that I understood it easily. So I kind of had to do my own thing and learn it that way, and learning how to use other things like other divinatory methods. So tuning into those, and a lot of it was doing it myself intuitively before I knew it was even a thing. And then going, oh, wait, this is something I can also learn about. I can also do this. This is other people do this. So it was just this wild, fascinating ride that is now my entire life.
Yes, isn't it? I love that stage. And we kind of go through different cycles of it, but there's quite nothing quite like that. That's that first stage of after like kind of having that big awakening where you're like this. There's so much to absorb and expand in. I love that you said that you mentioned how natural or easy it is for. I find that that's actually the key with divination, especially. I mean, we have to be at ease anytime that we're forcing or efforting. But we do, I think we also have this construct that we're coming from that, well, this is a complex system. I definitely need to go through a bunch of grueling, painful, years of study, because that's what we do for everything else in this world. It seems we're told that, but really, I've just started to really dig into runes, and it's the easier I am with it, the more they communicate with me more easily. And so ease is really important. Although tarot is a robust and rich system, isn't it?
It really is. And I often do say to people that I am teaching, there is intuitive tarot reading and there is the systemized tarot reading, which is traditional tarot reading. So one is where you rote learn all of the meanings, and one is where you just use intuitively or you tap into your psychic senses as to what's happening. And I think for me, the best way that I read is by molding the two together.
Yeah.
So
agreed.
I know all of the meanings, but I also have my intuitive meanings. So that might be a specific meaning for a specific card. So it's almost like a traditional meaning, but it's my own personal traditional meaning. And that would be, for example, the Nine of Swords for me is a card of mediumship. I don't think anyone else has that meaning. It's generally a card of sleeplessness and nightmares or insomnia, right? That's the traditional meaning. But for me, it's mediumship. And that came from that early day time period where I was practicing with these cards, tuning in intuitively, and I would do a daily draw. So first thing I tell everyone to do, you pull a card in the morning, tune into it. So close your eyes, look at the image. What does it make you feel? What does it make you think? What does it remind you of? What are the colors telling you? And this will change from deck to deck as well. Yeah. So different artists bring different things through. And so you tune in and you just write down everything that you think of. It might be keywords, it might be a whole memory that you put down there. And then you forget about it and go about your day. At the end of the day, that's when you pull that back out and you reflect on what you've written. Anything that you've written, does that resonate? Did that happen today? Did that theme come up for you? If it didn't, have a look at the card again and see what else you can see that might confirm how your day went. This is a really great way to start putting those things together, physical things that we've done with the actual card. Only then, once you've made all of those little associations, then go and look up the traditional meaning.
Yes. Oh, I love that.
And then see that if that resonates more, then go and see how that fits in with everything. And that's how you build this really fantastic knowledge. And then you've got a day to draw it on or a memory to draw it on. Once you've gone through all of the cards and you've done that, sometimes the same card will come up many times. You'll get lots of layers amongst it. And then once you've done all that, I often suggest to people to go the next level up, which is to sleep with a card under their pillow, just one card. Start with the major arcana and then, move on from there. And if you have good dream recall, this can be another fascinating way to connect with the energy of those cards and sort of do similar sort of thing. What did I dream about? What do I think I'm going to dream about? What is this? How did this card come through for me? It can be a really interesting exercise, but you'd have to build up your dream recall prior to that. And that's also the beginnings of something called oneiromancy, which is divination by dreams. Anyone from the church will know this as Joseph in the Technicolor Code of Dreams. He did dream divination, so oneiromancy. So it's fascinating how it all weaves.
Absolutely. And, I've been that's like I said, I've been digging into runes, and that's what I'm doing with runes right now is I'm kind of picking one for the day. I'm just getting acquainted to the rune. Now with runes, it's just like a symbol. So you kind of got to at least know the name of it and stuff. But I also, the way you're describing that's how I encourage people to get to know crystals. I love to be intuitively guided to one and make a connection and communicate telepathically with that crystal and ask it what it wants to do and everything. Now, these are individual consciousnesses, so it's going to have its own specific frequency. But then after you get to know it, then go look up what the traditional, definition of that kind of crystal is. And it's like, oh my gosh, I gravitated toward this crystal whose name I didn't even know for animal communication. And wouldn't you know, aventurine is for animal communication. And I love that it told me that, And it's both, it's the getting to know you process. And someone's history is a part of getting to know them. And these thought forms or constructs or, they're really guides all in unto themselves. So I think that's really beautiful. I love how you teach that.
Yeah, it's a fascinating way to sort of bring it into a way that you can make it part of your day as well.
Yes.
Rather than sitting down and reading. Like, there are great books on tarot, but they're books. And I love books. I write myself. I love books, but there's only so much books can teach you. They do often term it armchair witchcraft. You're going to learn a lot of stuff. You're not doing it, and you learn so much more with the doing.
Yes. Absolutely. That's so important. We have to, and one of my favorite channels, his name is Daralenka, and he channels an entity called Bashar, and he says the language of manifestation is physical action. So, it's like however much you are charging yourself up with, it's not going to really unfold. It's not going to manifest unless you take some physical action upon it. Armchair witchery.
Yes, put it. And that's fascinating. 2 points on that. I also follow a lot of the teachings of Bashar and Seth as well, which I think they're quite similar. But then the other thing with the actual physical steps, that's how I teach my moon manifesting as well. So I do have moon ritual worksheets that I've created for people. They're on my shop. And it's basically a way of going through that. And I list in there for every intention that you aim or every goal, every wish that you have to have 2 physical steps to bring it about. If you can't find or figure out that physical step, the likelihood of it coming true is not really there. And it doesn't have to be super like, I'm going to do this and this is going to happen. It can be more esoteric as well. Like, I'm going to practice opening myself up in meditation if it seems like a really far out there dream. That can still be enough. That's, I'm taking time to work towards this. So just that physical action step of, I'm actually going to put a little bit of energy, and it's just layers and layers of energy that go towards creating what you're wanting to achieve.
Yes. That's great. 2 action steps, everyone. I'm going to keep that in mind. Every single wish, every single intention. So you are also an astrologer, a natal astrologer. So
natal astrology.
Can you tell us what your sun, moon, and ascendant are? Just so we can.
I can. So my sun sign is in Virgo, and that's in the 9th house.
Beautiful.
What that means is your sun is how you express yourself. And your house that it falls into, that is the area of life that it comes through, or the area that you're best at expressing yourself. The 9th house it's traditionally ruled by Sagittarius, and it brings with it themes of religion, spirituality, exploration, travel. It's very expansive. It's the idea of, opening things up, opening people up to a greater idea of what's out there. It's optimistic, it's honest. And Sagittarius energy is very teacher-like. So it can be a fantastic student. They want to learn, but they're also fantastic at teaching things. The Virgo aspect is very practical, very, very practical steps. So I've almost melded the 2 together, this practical teaching method that opens up people's minds.
I love
so
that.
That's the way that energy comes through for me.
Yes.
My moon is in my 10th house, which is the house of career, and it's in Scorpio. So Scorpio can be very intense, and moon is your emotions, right? So my emotions can be intense. I'm not going to lie. I have had some overwhelming periods of things like mental health and that sort of thing that have felt like I was drowning, but I've always made it through the other side and almost had a rebirth at the other end. And the phoenix is very often associated with Scorpio energy. And I have seen that reflected time and time again in my life. Being in that 10th house of career, that means that the intuitive side, especially, there's also an occult aspect to Scorpio. That and the emotional aspect all forms part of what I'm here to do for my career, for my job. And I do that. My tarot readings, my husband often says, he goes, it's like a counseling session.
Yes.
And I'm not a counselor, but we get into the nitty-gritty, and we just go so deep with them. I called them a deep dive for a long time before I started putting them into 30 minutes and 60 minutes. But it was originally called the deep dive because that's what we did. We really took a deep dive into people's life and feelings, thoughts, dreams, wishes, fears, all of that. So that really comes through in how I do my work.
Mm-hmm.
And then the rising sign is in Aquarius. And Aquarius is very often associated with astrology and new age spirituality, health, medicine, science, all of those lovely things. And the rising sign is often the role that you're here to play. And this can be through your work or not through your work. It's just your life role, basically. And for Aquarius, it is to spread a message to the masses, right? And to create community. And I think I'm absolutely doing that. So I'm very out there on social media, and again, using technology to get my word out there is part of that energy. So podcasting, blogging, writing, all of these beautiful things, teaching on YouTube, on TikTok, utilizing all that beautiful technology to really spread the message I've got out there of, witchcraft is fun, it's accessible, it's not scary, and there's so many aspects to it. So yeah, that's my natal chart in a nutshell. The very, very three main ones. There's so much more to it.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for sharing and with so much context. I love that. That's really beautiful. And now for these messages. Hey there, friends in spirit and love. It's Tricia Carr here, and I want to invite you to a magical workshop called The Mystical Medium. The Mystical Medium is a live 2-day workshop designed to connect you to the other side. I'm teaching this workshop, so I want to share a few ways that mediumship is a powerful gift and blessing in my life. Well, personally, developing my mediumistic abilities helped me to have a deeper, more precise communication with my spirit guides. In conjunction with my meditation practice, mediumship has been key in helping me to hear, see, feel messages and guidance from spirit. Second, having a connection to my past loved ones is such a comfort, to say the least. By carrying on my relationships with those who have moved into eternity, well, I feel like I'm living more eternal and free. And finally, as a professional medium, being that channel for others and their past loved ones with evidential, unmistakable details, this has been such a humbling and truly mind-blowing experience, and I tell you, it is that every single time I experience it. So I hope you will check out the Mystical Medium Workshop. It will be offered live December 4th and 5th, 2021. The Mystical Medium is presented by Lightshine Academy. Visit class.lightshineacademy.com/mediumship. Learn more and register. Spirit is waiting. I have to say I love Virgo. I love Virgos. My favorite sister is Virgo sun. But I do, how we love to tease the signs and put them in categories. I'm a Pisces sun, so, I'm the flaky, emotional, no boundaries one, according to all the memes. And, but I was, my mentor, we were talking about another person that we know professionally. And I was like, oh, he moves so slow. What is he, an earth sign? And she's like, his birthday is August 27th. And I was like, Virgo, that's the worst one. I'm kidding, of course.
They've all got their pluses and their minuses.
Absolutely.
Pisces, it's so funny that you say that. My daughter is a Pisces sun.
I'm sorry.
And Pisces and Virgo are very opposite, right? They're opposite on the wheel, the zodiac wheel. And so often what Pisces are really good at, Virgos are not so good at. And what Virgos are really good at, Pisces are not so good at. So they can really balance each other out, or in your case, trigger a mirror sometimes. So it's really interesting to dive into those energies. But we have all of the signs, all of us have all of the signs somewhere in our chart. And so sometimes if we're just looking at sun signs, you get not quite the right picture.
The whole picture.
And
for sure.
I encourage everyone, if you do know your rising sign, that's the horoscope you should be reading for your rising sign rather than your sun sign.
Yeah, because it's so proximate. It's so temporal in a way, right?
It's the most critical point in the chart is the rising sign, and that relies on the birth time, which not everybody has access to. And if that's you out there are astrologers that do a process called rectification, where they can work backwards through your chart and events that have happened in your life to come up with an approximate time of birth. So that's something that can happen. It takes a very long time. So it's time intensive. It's not something I offer. But there's a lot of people out there that were adopted or may just not have access to those records. So that can be an option if they want to get into astrology.
Mm-hmm. And it's like a 2-hour window. So, I think I was actually last night, we were watching this Beatles documentary that Peter Jackson just released yesterday and today. And I went and looked up all of the Beatles charts, of course. All 4 of them were born in Liverpool between 40 and 43. And every single one of them, it was like they were born at 2:10 or 2:30 or 4:10. I was like, it's a little too perfect. I feel like they were all born under the same Liverpool doctor. And he's like, whatever, close enough, So, I'm actually right at the margin between, I'm a Leo ascendant, but I'm like right by Virgo, but it's kind of like if I were born 10 minutes later, it would be Virgo. And but I'm so like, so clearly Leo, it's kind of obvious. So I'm pretty comfortable with my birth time after all, but it's so close to the line.
Yeah, it does. That rising sign degree, that changes every 4 minutes.
4 minutes.
So
I thought it was 2 hours.
The rising sign itself
Okay.
has 30 degrees in it,
Okay.
and that's every 2 hours,
Oh,
but
I
it's
see.
approximately every 4 minutes for the actual degree. So if you're on the 29th degree and your birth time is out by 4 minutes, you could be in the other sign. Or if you're on this 0, 1, 2 degrees, that's where it gets really complex. Sometimes I have people like my brother, we're not 100% on his time, so I've gone and done my own little digging, again, gone back through his life events, things like that. So you can look up major events to see how they correspond. And we got down to it, and he was right smack bang in the middle of Sagittarius. So I knew that basically his rising sign was going to be Sagittarius because we narrowed it down to that hour. So even an hour before, an hour after, he's still a Sagittarius rising. So we brought it down enough in that regard. But if he was either end of it, it's still, either side. Knowing my brother intimately, I know that he's absolutely a Sagittarius rising. This kid barely wears shoes. He's very nomadic. He lives in a place called Byron Bay, which is by the beach. All he does is surf all day and eat vegan food and lives in his car from time to time. Like, he's absolutely happily nomadic. It's fantastic. So he really epitomizes that Sagittarian wild side and freedom loving side. So it's got every sign has all these different aspects. That's what I love about it. It's very rich. There's so many options with it, and it just shows how intricate and amazing we all actually are. Like the qualities that we all have, the possibility of all of them being the same in 2 different people is just phenomenal. Like, there's no possibility you'll have the same birth chart as someone else.
Absolutely. Are you also are you a student, or are you interested in human design or the gene keys or any of these other methods?
I would love to look into it. I have done one of those brief little tests that came up saying, I think, a manifesting generator.
Yeah, I can feel that.
Design.
Yeah.
I haven't gone any deeper in that. I feel like I have so many other things at the moment, but it is something I'd really love to learn more about. It seems fascinating.
It is, and it's very, very complex. Of course it is. I mean, it's based on 4 ancient observational sciences, one of which is astrology. It's actually kind of easy to start working with, because the suggestion is that you just experiment with your strategy and authority. So your strategy as a manifesting generator is to wait to respond, but you also have, that's the generator, but then you also have manifesting qualities, which means that you can initiate, but still predominantly it's to wait to respond. Yeah, that's right. I'm like mixing up in my mind. Projector is wait for the invitation, which is like an even deeper waiting. Generators wait to respond, but you have the manifesting quality, so sometimes you initiate. But your authority is something else. It could be emotional, splenic, or there's different kinds of authorities that you could have. So, and then you just kind of start experimenting with it. But there's a lot to dig into. It's really fun too. And gene keys. Have you caught on to gene keys yet?
I haven't. I'm going to have to go and Google this afterwards.
Yeah, you'll love it. I just started. I can't even believe it. You know how it's like, it's almost like you're saying, your guides kind of wait until you're ready. And I feel like they hid from me gene keys for a long time, because I'm like, how did I not even hear this until now? It's been a few months. But the gene keys were, I guess, I know you would say like channeled or kind of like brought through by a man named Richard Rudd. And he actually worked in human design. So human design is kind of the foundation for a lot of his work, but then he, kind of branched off into developing this other system. And it's based a lot on the Chinese I Ching. And we have a chart of gene keys that are predominant, and we all it's based on the 64 genes, in our genome and in the I Ching. And it's really amazing. And the way also, it's not like a belief system. It's just kind of like understand, very much like with astrology, the placement of this and the actual, it works on like the shadow, the gift, and the siddhi, siddhi, which is a Sanskrit word for like divine gift. So it's kind of like this triad of, and the shadow is the resource for reaching the gift and the siddhi and opening these up. So it's like what one gene key is, gene key 35, and what placement of your chart. Maybe it's the purpose, and it's very much like the signs with the houses. And it's really, and they just suggest, that you just contemplate it and just let it be in your contemplation, It's really amazing. Yeah. I'm taking
I think what's fascinating with the astrology is it is like learning another language.
Yes.
And you have to learn how to read it and how to understand it and activate it in your life. And now when I look at people, I literally just see their astrology chart.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yes, that's how I view people now. But that sounds really similar. Like you're having to learn how to read and interpret these gene keys and then bring them into your life in an energetic form. I love that.
Yeah. If you just Google gene keys chart, you can find, and you can look right away. It gives you like some the major breakdowns, and just like everything else, you're like, the universe knows me.
Is it based on birth time as well?
Yes. Yes. With human design, so I'm a reflector in my human design. And so all of my centers are open, just like it's the epitome of sensitivity.
I actually love that, because I don't know much about it, but just the word reflector and the fact that you're a Pisces, that to me, like if we know the tarot moon card is ruled by Pisces. The moon is very reflective, right? It reflects the sun back at us. So that already just feels like it fits in with that energy of your Piscean side. It's
weird, but I mean, there are other reflectors in the world who aren't Pisces, but somehow I wound up in the epitome, as you're saying. It's kind of weird, right? It's in the human design types, all of the types are solar beings, except for the reflector is a lunar being. So I basically am like a piece of the moon around here. Just Beautiful. Amplifying energies. No, but there's something about it. Like as soon as I kind of got a little bit acquainted with human design, because the design types are how your aura function basically. So you're a manifesting generator, but as a generator, fundamentally, you have an open and enveloping aura. So you bring people into your energy, which can also be, make you could be very sensitive to it as well, because some people, they don't necessarily accept your energy. There's this, who's holding the stronger frequency, but you do bring everyone into your energy. And I kind of feel that right away. Like I can just feel who's someone, like how their aura is working now that I'm understanding the aura types a little bit. So it's really awesome.
It's fascinating. There are so many different ways of understanding ourselves out there. And I think it's fascinating to look into all of them and see what resonates and leave what doesn't. But it can be really, really fascinating just to explore those sides of yourself as well. And it makes you question parts of yourself, which I think is a good thing. I think we need to do that.
Yes, absolutely. What are some of so you do natal chart readings, you do tarot sessions. Are there some other types of divination? Are there other tools or systems that you really gravitate toward, or that you think are great ways for people to start?
I do, yes, absolutely. So what I've done, I'm actually creating a course at the moment in psychic divination.
Oh, I love it.
So it's that like extra layer of using all of the psychic senses whilst you're using these tools as well, because divination is generally using a tool-based system. Okay, so you've often got something like a candle to do fire scrying, or incense to do smoke scrying, or those sorts of things. Like there's a tool that you're using. And in the course, what I've done is I've broken them into 3 separate types. There is simple divination, there is systemized or classic divination, and then there is free-flowing divination. And they also go in level of difficulty as well. The easiest is simple divination. And this is things like flipping a coin, right? You can do heads and tails, help you make decisions about your life in that manner. This is things like a Ouija board or a spirit board. You don't need any specific knowledge or training in order to use these simple tools. I do recommend, though, if you are diving into spirit boards, that you're not going in with fear and you are going in with respect. That's kind of the main rules, but you're not having to learn meanings or anything like that, right?
Yeah.
So all of these absolutely still go in with respect. It's when people use a spirit board and have it like a party game and they're drinking and they want to be scared. Well, that's what's going to happen. So
that's particularly one that has so much stigma. I mean, I think it's probably from the 70s, because my family, my sisters, are still actually wrestling with their fears of being traumatized by somehow with the Ouija. And, I don't know. I think maybe in other time periods, it was actually tarot that frightened people. But we're still
and tarot
like
still
healing.
does.
It does.
It
You're
still
right.
does.
Mm-hmm.
There was a TikTok I was watching yesterday. There was an American man here in Australia on one of our trains and preaching to people on the train, and everyone was being very Australian about it in terms of not wanting to listen. It was quite funny. However, he was saying, I'm sure you'd listen to a tarot reader of the devil rather than me. And they're like, yeah, well, we probably go to them by choice. We're not being preached at on the train.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, the tarot is still very feared in the Christian community.
Mm-hmm.
However, I think Ouija boards or spirit boards are still feared even in the spiritual community, in all communities. And I think that's from a lot of media and film, the way it's been portrayed. The Exorcist certainly didn't help things when it started off with a Ouija board.
I don't think I even saw that one. So, I mean, I was so, at the time, it was like way too, it was like, I was alive when it actually came out, and I was too young. So, and I think it scared the hell out of my sisters. So it's got this shockwave of just fear in my family. And so I've just not done it because I'm like, there are other things. I mean, maybe at some point, if it's really important to me, I could heal from that and use it. But I don't know, just haven't gotten around to it, There are other options.
The spirit boards, they're a fantastic form of communication for a lot of people who have then learnt to channel. Yeah. So people like Jane Roberts, who did the Seth series, and then also who else does them? I think Jenny Tyson does. She uses the Ouija board and then ended up channeling as well, alien beings as well. So there's a few people out there that have channeled books and things like that using a Ouija board to start. So it can be really useful for that. But again, just making sure you're respecting the energies that you work with, like with any form of witchcraft or spiritual activity. So then those are the simple ones. You can also use a pendulum. Pendulums are really, really great for simple divination. Again, they're going to give you a yes, no, or a maybe. But you can also use them in really other fun ways as well. So with, coin flipping, yes or no, it can be a little bit closed in what you can garner from that. With the pendulum, you could, for example, if you've lost an item, you could walk around your house with your pendulum and wait for it to show you a yes response to know you're in the right room, and then walk around the room looking for where the item might be. Or draw yourself a little map of your home, a little floor plan, and hold it over that and wait for it to activate. I've used this with a map of the world to look at where my past lives were. And it's been fascinating for where it's activated and things that I'm either really weirdly drawn to places, or just have to go there, or I've had to travel there, or I've learnt that language randomly, which wasn't any reason for it. So those sorts of things have then resonated and gone, oh my goodness, this is so fun. It's fun. It's exciting. And then you can dive into that a little bit more with, guided meditations into regression, past life regression. So that can be really useful. Pendulums are a great tool as well outside of that. They can cleanse your chakras. They can cleanse your crystals. They're just really, really useful. You can also use them for communicating, and a lot of people think they are for communicating with spirits or ghosts, as people call them, but they're not predominantly. They're often going to use your own intuitive senses. It's just like a shortcut to get there. It's using your kinetic energy to get that information faster. If you do want to use it to communicate with a spirit, a ghost, a past loved one, your guides, all of that, you can also do that by attaching it to a holder or onto the lid inside a bottle and letting it do its own thing where you're not touching it. So there's just two different methods of using those. And that's simple divination. Dowsing rods are included in that as well. Classic divination, you've got things like tarot and oracle cards, which falls under the card term cartomancy. So mancy means divination. Card or cart is Latin for card. So card divination, tarot, oracle cards, reading cards, angel cards, whatever type of cards you can find, a deck of playing cards, it all falls under this. So I find that for me, one of the ones I use predominantly. That's my main form of divination. Oh, another simple one. This one's fascinating because we used it in the church, but they didn't call it divination.
Bibliomancy?
Bibliomancy, yes,
Yes, I
correct.
knew
So
it.
biblio is the term for book, right? So book divination. We didn't call it that, of course not. It was just, when you're seeking guidance from God, take your Bible,
Yep.
flip it open, and you will find the wisdom that you seek.
Yep.
So we can do this. I actually find the Bible really, really useful for
Me
that.
too.
But you can use any book. Any book is going to be fine. Depending, maybe some of the kids' books, maybe not so much.
Maybe
Pig
though.
the Pug. Yeah, Pig the Pug probably won't give you the same thing as
Not so much wisdom.
Yeah, exactly. So I have a few books that I do like to call on. There's a Louise Hay book called Heal Your Life. You Can Heal Your Life. That one's really great to flip to. And healing thoughts, I think, or heart thoughts is another really great one of hers. And each page is an affirmation. So it's almost like pulling an oracle card.
Yeah,
right?
you're going to get a good message no matter what. But what's so cool is when you surrender to it, then you're like, oh my gosh, I asked about how I could heal my heart, and this heart in this affirmation, or whatever it is.
Exactly. So it's really great, and you can go in with a question, or you can just go in looking for general guidance. Astrology, I've termed classic divination. So divination is just the way, it's not always foretelling the future, although that is a part of it, but it is a way of finding information that is hidden and can't otherwise be known, right? It's not a physical thing that you can find. And so with that, and it's usually, supernatural or occult or ESP methods of getting that, right? So with things like astrology, there are so many different forms. Natal astrology is looking at the birth chart. Then you've got things like orrery, which is HORARY, orrery astrology. And that is where you go in with a question. So if you yourself, the astrologer, you would just ask the question and cast a chart at the moment you thought of the question. If you're going to an astrologer, some would like you to tell them the moment you thought of the question, or they take it from the moment you tell them the question and they understand that. And what this is they cast a chart for that. So this might be, I've lost this item, right? And then they might then go into the chart and look at where this item might be based on where the planets or energies are in that particular chart at that moment. So that can be really good for that sort of thing. There's different forms of astrology as well. There is tropical astrology. There is, which is the Western method. And then we've also got the things like Indian astrology, which goes back to and Vedic astrology and things like that. And they're a different star system, but all of it seems still to be really accurate. I don't teach on that because I haven't learnt that, and I don't think it's my place, but that's a lot more future-based and predictive than Western tropical astrology, but they've both got predictive qualities as well. So then we've also got palmistry that falls into those as well. So again, there's a system, there's almost rules. This is what this line is. This is what it means. When you have this one, it means this. If it does this, it means that. So they're the ones that have all these little rules to them. That's systemized or classic divination. Tasseomancy, which is tea leaf reading, does fall into this and free flowing. It's kind of on the cusp of both of them. And that's where you're basically reading symbols in the leaves of your cup. And this is one that I use most often after astrology and tarot, I'd say. I love it. It's just so much fun. And with most of divination, you want to have fun. If you're having fun, you're going to have a really good experience with it. Yeah. And this was the first form of divination I ever tried personally.
Oh,
for me, it felt the least scary. Like, I'm just having a cup of tea. What could go wrong?
What could go wrong with tea?
Exactly. And I remember when I read my husband's cup for the first time. It was my first time reading someone else's cup. And I said, I'm just going to have a look. And so I looked into it and I saw two fish next to each other. I didn't know astrology at this point, but I just knew two fish was Pisces, right? I was like, oh, Pisces, cool. I guess that's what that symbol is. And I kept looking and I saw like a flock of birds and a man, and there was a few other things there. And I'm like, okay, it feels like you're going to have a visitor soon who's a Pisces. They're a stranger, but you know them really well. I was really confused by this reading, and I used to keep this little journal called my Tasseomancy journal. I'd write down everything I got. I'd draw a little picture of the cup and all the symbols and what I'd, intuited them to mean. And so he's like, that makes no sense. I don't know what you're talking about. And I was like, I don't know. Anyway, a year later, we had our daughter, who is a Pisces, and she's a stranger
that you also know.
We also know really well. So
that's amazing. I love it.
So that was really fascinating. And I didn't put that together until I looked back and went, oh, and of course I didn't see a pregnancy in his cup because he's not the one having the pregnancy. Like it was just a different way of looking at it. So I've also, when I did a YouTube video on this as well, I was teaching on tasseomancy in a YouTube clip. And I just did it like, I'm just going to do a practice one. Here, let's have a look at this cup. And this was filmed in February of 2020 when we didn't know what was happening in the world yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw a plague mask and I saw a campfire. And the campfire itself, like the element of fire, right? It's very damaging. It spreads really rapidly.
Mm-hmm.
But a campfire is contained. And the words I used in the video were contain the spread. And then COVID hits. And I was like
2 weeks
everyone's
later.
watching. Yeah, everyone's watching this in the future. I think I uploaded it in March, but everyone's looking at this going, what did you say?
Yeah.
And the next cup I did, because I did one with black tea leaves and one with herbal tea leaves, and they just look differently because
Mm-hmm.
herbal ones are shaped differently.
Mm-hmm.
And I did the second one, and I knew it was about my daughter, and I wrongly interpreted it. I actually interpreted it as a very far in the future one of her having a baby, and basically handing me this baby. And I fell pregnant about a month later.
Oh,
so it was me giving her a sibling.
Well, you were still going to hand her a baby at some point.
Yeah, exactly. So it was really interesting. And I knew that it was sort of all wrapped in together, but I just didn't realize how close in the future that was, because in my mind, we hadn't decided to start trying. We hadn't decided to have a baby yet. It was still too far in the future for me to have even thought of that being in the cup. And sometimes that's where we get into our own way when we're reading for ourselves. We're like, oh, no, I know that's not true. So that's not what it is.
I did.
But when you read for others, it's
yes,
different.
Because you're objective. That's right. And that's the benefit, even though like you are a reader, it's great for you to have sessions with other, tarot or astrology or anything like that, because they have more objectivity. I actually it's interesting. It was with my pendulum. I was teaching online. It was just like a free lesson in the Lightshine Lab, which is a community that Crystal, my partner, started. And I was just doing a simple little lesson on a pendulum, just like a 15-minute lesson. At the time, my husband and I were we were trying, as you say, we were working on becoming pregnant. And so I was like, so for example, I thought, tra-la-la, because I was certain that I was like the opposite of you. I was certain that I was going to be becoming pregnant sometime. And I did the pendulum, and I was like, did the yes, no, and the maybe. It had it show me the swing. And then I said, I thought this was going to be an easy question. I was like, am I going to, become pregnant and have my own child sometime? And it told me no. And I was like, and also like very public. I was like,
yes.
I was mainly thinking, oh my gosh, everybody must feel so bad for me.
Oh.
And I was like, that's weird. It must not be working. And it turns out I'm not. I mean, at that time, I was still in the age range that it was possible, and that was the intention, and that's what we thought was going to happen. But it didn't. We're past the age now of even, because I said pregnant. So isn't that interesting?
Yeah,
I was fine. I'm fine, by the way. Everyone, don't cry. I'm okay.
I have a few times had to redirect my clients because they'll come to me and they'll say, I want to know this, this, and this. And I have to stop and go, okay.
Do you really?
I can look at that. Yeah. I can look at that. But I need you to ask yourself, how would you feel if you got the answer you didn't want? Because this is one of those questions that's going to, it can eat you up inside if you know that answer. So have a think. Do you want to know? Or do you want to ask something else about how you can achieve that better?
Right.
So we just reroute it a little bit because, if someone asks me things like, and this is where the asking of the question comes into play as well. If you go in with a fate-based idea, and fate-based means, will I? Mm-hmm. Will I find love? Yeah. If you get an answer to that says no, how are you going to feel? Your mental health might plummet. Horrible things happen to people that think they'll never find love or never find what they want. Mm-hmm. And so that's not, for me as an ethical reader, I don't think that's appropriate for me to answer that sort of a question. Mm-hmm. However, if we and even if it was a yes, you will, great. What does that give you?
Sit back and not do anything, just wait for him to find me in my home.
So I often say, look, how about we look at how can I
align with a great love or something? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And what action steps can I take to find the love of my life? Those sorts of things. And it's the same with, will I get this job? And we might say yes, right? And they don't go to the interview because they think, I got my job. I don't need to go to the interview. Exactly. It doesn't work like that, right? So the future isn't fixed and it's not all written in the stars. There are some things written in the stars. There are some energies that will happen, but we have free will And we need to incorporate that into our divination and understand that as well. So asking open-ended, choice-based questions. So how and what? So what can I do to? How can I best achieve this? Sometimes we'll look at the likelihood of things.
Yeah.
What I love using divination for, especially in my tarot readings, is things like, what is the best choice for me? So if people are like, I don't know which job to take, I don't know which boyfriend to pick, I don't know which, whatever it is that they've got to decide on. I've had people ask on advice on baby names. I've had people ask on so many different things, which career should I progress towards? Which one should I focus on? So many different ways that we can look at the likely outcome of both of those energies. And then that can help people come to a decision that feels best for them. So that's one of my favorite ways to use tarot.
It's the quality of the question. And actually, it's really interesting. My guides were it always happens, the synchronicities, but my guides were talking to me about that today. The quality of the question is as important. Well, it's setting the stage for the answer that you'll get. It's setting the frequency, the half of the frequency. Because I was just thinking about how people that are, they think that psychism is either scary or, like some kind of parlor trick. And so you've probably, I don't know if you have them, but, people will be like, oh, so when am I going to have my baby? Or, oh, so is it a boy or a girl? And it's like the quality of the question is disrespectful. And so I don't usually align with that, but I have been in the middle of a reading and just been like, well, you're going to get pregnant within 2 months and it's going to be a girl. And if you choose to have a second, it's going to be a boy. And they didn't ask that. It was just like, that was the energies that were unfolding from that, again, a higher quality of alignment. And with that one client that I just mentioned, it turned out that, well, the second one hasn't happened yet, but the first one did.
It's funny. So I used divination with my son, basically my second baby. So I did a tarot reading way before we were thinking of falling pregnant again. And I just sort of looked at, when are we likely to have a baby? And are they going to be a boy or a girl? And I already knew it was going to be a boy. And I think I'd said that after I had my daughter, the next one's going to be a boy. And even right now, I can tell you the next one's going to be a boy again. I just know it. But my tarot cards they reflected that back at me again. They did the Page of Wands. I was like, oh, that's a boy energy. Definitely going to be a boy.
That's what that is. That's a boy.
So it's fascinating when we can sort of sometimes intuitively know something, and then the cards can be validation as well, or the form of divination you use is validation. And there are some other really great ones as well. So you can use free-flowing divination, which is things like chiromancy, which is wax reading. That's a really fantastic one. That's one of my favorites. And then, as I said before, smoke, which is capnomancy and fire scrying. All of these things, they can be really, really useful, but you have to be in that intuitive space. You have to understand how to tap into that next level, if that makes sense. There's not going to be a guidebook saying, oh, you saw this, that's what it's going to mean. There are some things out there on symbols. You have to have a good knowledge of traditional symbols, but a lot of that is learning your own personal symbolism and understanding how things work together and what it's going to tell you. So if anyone wants to try those, you can grab a bowl of water and light a candle and start dripping wax into the water and seeing the symbols that it creates. Over time, you might, I'd suggest using a specific bowl and only using it for that purpose. Over time, you might say, okay, similar to a tea leaf reading, how specific areas of the cup mean different things. Maybe in your bowl, it means different things. If you use a glass bowl, maybe you can draw some symbols on the outside. And if wax, falls into a place near that symbol, maybe that's meaning something different. Similar to the divination I use when I'm using candle magic, I'll write symbols on the outside of this big glass pillar candle. And if there's any, smoke or ash build up there, then that's often a blockage if I've drawn the symbol of Mercury, maybe it's a blockage in the mind, it's a mental blockage. So there's different ways you can start to bring all these symbols, intuitive meanings into the method that you're using. And it's a bit more open-ended. So it's a bit more flowy. I love using those ones, but it is harder for people to tap into unless they've already got those almost grounded measures of trying the other forms first.
Or if they're accustomed to just clearing the mind, clearing the consciousness and shifting into that intuitive state. And that's really all. And that's only something that you have to work on because we are conditioned to the contrary, to be very non-present and to be pulled in the different directions with the mind and to not be in touch with our just pure inner energies.
Mm.
I love
And a lot of
patamancy, by the way, I have to say. A patamancy, which is spirit animals, basically, the
Mhm.
sighting of animals. Sorry, go ahead. I just have to mention animals anytime I think of them.
Well, you can use, I mean, I use ornithomancy, which is
Mhm.
divination by birds.
Yes.
And just to get a little personal, I've been seeing 3 ravens flying across my path every day for a couple of weeks. And to me, 3 ravens, for me personally, this isn't for everyone, but 3 ravens is often a death symbol.
Mm.
And me being, trying to be me, I'm like, oh, maybe there's the end of a cycle. Maybe it's because we're moving house soon. Maybe it's this. And it's almost like that underlying of, it's not. It's not.
Mm.
I was like, no, I refuse to believe, basically. Again, if I'm giving this as a reading to someone, I'm going to say what I say. That's a death symbol.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's for yourself, you start to backpedal.
Sure.
You're like, no, maybe it's not.
Yeah.
And we got the news this week. The day that I saw one single raven cross my path, and that means sorrow, that was the day that I received the news that my grandmother was given not long to live. And she's in another state, and there's restrictions on us traveling to interstate in terms of COVID here. So that's not possible.
Mm.
So I'm going, oh, okay, there we go. That's that symbol coming through.
Yeah.
So yeah, animals, you can use anything to divine. You could use the bark on a tree. You could use the way the trees move together. You can use anything at all. I have a friend that reads carpet.
Oh, interesting.
He
of course,
actually
why
can
not?
read the shapes in the carpet. After you vacuum, you can see shapes. Walking on it all day, he can walk into someone's house and start, if they have a question, he'll just look at the carpet and tell you what he sees. So our guides will use whatever we want to use and whatever we have available to us to bring us the information that we need to see.
What I love about divination so much is because I have such a strong connection to the Fey realm and the Davic realms. That's a big part of just this, incarnation for me. And I really connect with the fact that divination, it really involves the Fae and the Devas, because it's magic. They love magic, and they love manifestation, and they love materialization. They love that brink of just that liminal space of bringing something from energy to material, because they're kind of like on that cusp, and they work with nature and the elements. So that's one of the things I love about any of the divination tools, because you get to use something that is a charm or a talisman or a physical, kind of a lot of times. But one time I did actually do a map scrying, because I was helping my friend to find her cat, and I couldn't get there. She lived like an hour away. And so I Google mapped her area. I don't remember if it was like a square mile. And I Google mapped it and just brought up like a satellite map, and then turned on the markup function, and I just, cleared it, and I went doot, doot, and circled 2 places on the map. And we ended up finding her there. Yeah. So it was kind of like using a pendulum, but it was, instead I was using my finger with a technology based implement. Yeah.
I love the use of technology in there as well. That's really great.
Yeah.
There's another form as well. So you were mentioning before, liminal space. Absolutely. It really is a liminal space, and it's what makes it so magical.
Yeah.
And then B, you mentioned about how needing to go into that place of focus, or like a meditative sort of state to access some of this stuff, especially in free-flowing divination. And I just wanted to mention to anyone, because I know a lot of people struggle with meditation, especially anyone that might be neurodivergent. It can be difficult. So you can try things like active meditation, which is different to the inactive where you sit there. Active is things like adult coloring in, pottery, gardening, running, all of these things where you're physically moving or doing something. Painting is fantastic. That's how I learned to meditate, by painting. So I would paint, and it might take me 20 minutes to an hour to paint something. And I'd notice that entire time I was either focused on the painting or not really thinking. And my thoughts I could notice them more. I could sit back. I was almost like taking a side seat. And then I started meditating. I was like, oh, I've never been able to do this. I can do this now. So it's a really great way to get into that habit. And I find divination, if you're not good at that inattentive, sitting down, holding your hands on your knees type of meditation, divination is a great way to get used to that energy as well, because you have something to focus on. You have that focal point, whether it's your teacup or your cards, where you're not thinking about anything else. So it almost puts you into that zone, or gets you used to that zone. The more you do it, the better you get at it, and the deeper you can go.
Yes. All through my 20s and a lot of my 30s, I was healing from my church, stuff, and terrible abuses in traumatic childhood, and then adult abuse, all that kind of stuff. just getting up to things. But no, I was during this really healing stage for about 15 years. I became a very avid runner, and I remember saying the reason I loved it so much, especially in my 20s when I was doing the deepest pitch of the healing, it felt like my mind was on a ride. And I basically felt free of my mind. I felt free of the thoughts and the thinking. So I didn't know I didn't have the language then. I was completely doing a moving meditation, and I still do it. It's still a big part of my process to be out in nature, running or moving my body. Yeah. Thank you for all of those tips. Those are fantastic tips. I was going to ask you for some tips on meditation and on consciousness. It's really, I like to call it consciousness practice. It's just like your movement practice or, your diet practice. Your consciousness practice wants the same attention. It's what you take in and what you release, and being able to be in touch with what is genuinely yours, which is actually just that pure energy. It's a beautiful, open, blissful energy, right?
And when I'm helping people learning things like psychic divination, if they do want a meditation practice and they want to try that, start small, a minute, 2 minutes. That's all you need at first. That's better than nothing, right? And that's going to help train your mind, because it is a training. You're not going to start off running a marathon.
I use that example all the time. Like, you want to run a marathon, you run one block, you're like, oh, I got a cramp. I'm not good at running. It's like, well, no, because you haven't been running.
So you just, run the length of your street a couple times, right? That might be, so maybe you just sit down in a spot and you don't try and meditate. You just sit in that chair. You go, I have the intention to meditate in this chair. At some point it will happen. Yeah. And you just sit there. Maybe you play on your phone at first. Then you try sitting there and not playing on your phone. Or maybe you read first. You just dial it back, little baby steps. Baby steps are fine. Because if we try and jump in to the deep end, sometimes that means we either drown and we can't figure it out, or we jump out and go, oh, never doing that again.
Yeah.
And
judge
we
ourselves.
Shut up shop.
Yeah. We judge ourselves because we, quote unquote, failed. But in fact, having the intention to do something for yourself, the universe will rush to help you with that. If you have the intention to connect with your inner energies, even if it's like, 1 minute, 3 minutes, all of your guides are going to show up, and they're going to do everything they can to support that. And consistency is a big part of it, though, too, because that's the kind of creatures that we are. That, like you say, it's training.
Set an alarm.
Yeah.
Set an alarm. I used to meditate at 10 p.m. every night, and that was the alarm would go off and I'd go, oh, okay. And I knew I needed to do that.
Yeah.
Now it's probably more sporadic, just the fact that I have a baby on my arm. So half the time I can't, but I might sit there, and whilst I'm feeding him at night, I will go into my meditation space. Or as I'm trying to fall asleep at whatever time I get to bed, that's when I do a little like dream meditation. And it's just really my own personal like visualization in my mind to maybe help me go to sleep. And that is enough. And life comes in. That's fine. That's fine. But I've also had that practice for a very long time as well. So it's easy for me to tap into that state.
Yes. Yes, exactly. That's really great. I remember one time I had to get up at like 4 a.m. to get an international flight. And, I'm like,
it's fun.
Oh, it was, painful. And I was in the Uber and I was meditating. I was like, I
love that.
It was the only time I had. It felt weird though, because I usually ground, and I was like, the earth is moving while I'm trying to ground. Kind of threw a wrench in it, but in a good way.
We can utilize so many different things. Herbs, so having a herbal tea, even just the intention to sit and have a cup of tea can be a form of meditation for you, especially when you're starting out. If you're wanting to really calm your mind, or if you're wanting to work on things like your clairaudience, maybe try a chamomile tea. That can be really, really useful. And not everybody likes chamomile tea. Maybe you want to work on opening your heart chakra and, being, open to the abundance of the universe. So maybe try a rose petal tea.
I love rose
If you
tea.
really need grounding, black tea. Black tea is very grounding, or a rooibos tea, something like that. And just sitting with your tea and tuning into how it makes you feel. How does this, make your mind feel, make your body feel? How does just sitting in this specific place, or standing, or walking outside barefoot, whatever it is, just tuning into how it makes you feel and thinking about focusing on that tea can be enough. 5 minutes, done. Once a week, fine.
And I do this actually every day. I meditate with my cats. It's usually they usually take turns, but yeah, before I start meditating, I sit with whichever one of my kitties wants to do the meditation that day, and it's like an induction. We connect, and cats and dogs, but cats especially have more alpha brain waves. It's more enhanced in their brains than humans. So they actually give me an attunement, and it makes it very easy. And then at some point I'm closing my eyes and I'm doing my visualization. So yeah, cat meditation. I highly recommend it.
Yes, I do the same. So the very first time that I did that tea leaf reading, that very first time, many, many years ago, I actually remember using valerian root tea. For whatever reason, I think I might have been struggling with insomnia at the time. I've had that on and off many, many years. And valerian tea was something that was suggested, and I thought, I'll give it a go. Be careful, anyone who has cats. My cat is addicted.
They love it.
Like, way more than catnip. She goes crazy for it. I have to hide the valerian tea in the top of my laundry cupboard, or she'll go and knock it over and start rolling in it. It's crazy. I made this tea and I'm sitting there and she's rubbing her head on the teacup. I'm like, can you just let me be? And then I drank my tea and then did my reading. And she sat with me the whole time. Now, that might have been the valerian root tea. Might have been the state that it got me into as well. But she sat with me whilst I did this divination and tuned in, and she was looking at me so intently, and I'm thinking, you are aiding me in this. You are helping me. And then I did it another time with just a black tea, and she did the same. She didn't rub her head on the cup, but she sat with me the whole time. Yeah. And now if I sit down to meditate, it kind of upsets the whole vibe of it when she jumps on my lap mid-meditation, but she's just drawn to it. Yeah. And they really are. They're like, oh, you're going into another state. I got to be a part of this. They're so sensitive to those energies.
Oh, absolutely. And our animals do meditate. We think that cats and dogs and birds as well, we think that they're sleeping a lot of the day, but they're actually in a meditative state, and they're actually doing soul work, and they're doing all of that, journeying actually. And they all of my sessions, not all of them, but a lot of my sessions, first of all of my animal sessions, the animal usually comes up and they'll be like, oh, look at her or him. And the animal's like, and I'm like, yeah, he's meditating. He's joining us in the session right now. And
that's so sweet.
Yes, it is so sweet. I have one of my favorite things. People have sent me a lot of photos of their animals, like looking at the screen while I'm teaching. I actually have those photos on my website. It's my favorite thing. Like as soon as Tricia starts, yes, it makes me so happy. Wow. Well, we covered so much. You're such a beautiful teacher. If we lived next door to one another, we'd probably, be hanging out all
We'd
night
never
long.
get any work done, or we'd just work all day together.
Exactly. This has been so wonderful, Hana. I just appreciate you so much. Thank you for bringing your light, bringing your wisdom here. And, I want to have you on again because I wanted to talk about spells and we didn't even get to that.
I touched on it briefly with a candle spell, but we didn't get right into it, did we?
I love spells. I love crafting spells, talking about spells. So we'll do that some other time. But
absolutely, I'd love to.
We have all of your offers, all of your information in the description, and you're so wonderful. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a joy.
Well, there you have it. That is Hana the Suburban Witch. Be sure to check the description for the links to all of her social media and all the different platforms, all the ways that she is servicing both professionally and out of her own heart for free on social media. And also do check the links in the description for the various workshops that we have coming up, as well as the Intuitive Intensive, which registration is opening up for very, very soon. And we have the Mystical Medium Workshop. Oh my goodness, guys, we have so much coming up for you with the Lightshine Academy, as well as with the Mystic Arts Academy. So leave us a review on the podcast. Whatever application will have a way for you to leave a review. So thank you for considering doing that. It really helps to boost us in the algorithm and to also infuse us with our light quotient connection to one another. All right, that's all I have for you today, guys. I hope you had as much fun as I did. And thanks for tuning in. I love you, whoever you are.